Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight I want to welcome back to the show Peter Kling. He is an author and researcher whose family has a 500-year history of standing for the truth, starting with the Reformation of the Church. He used his education and life experience to unlock the secrets in the Scriptures, which the Church has kept hidden for over 1,000 years, including evidence of a history of interactions with interdimensional beings. And we also have another special guest with us tonight, Maggie Hart. She's an internationally known lecturer, ordained in spiritual warfare. Maggie, Peter, how are you both tonight?
Thank you very much for having us, Chris. We're doing fantastic. Maggie?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for having us.
Well, thanks again for joining us. You know, our reality is getting stranger every day, from transhuman agendas, divide and conquer techniques, excessive censorship, to the UFO and alien mania that's in the news now. We're going to talk about how we can apply this to biblical prophecy. But first, I'd like to find out a little bit more about each of you. Peter, you've been on a few times, but just give us a little bit more about your background, and then Maggie.
Well, in a nutshell, it's quite interesting. For some reason, they thought I needed to start learning scripture. I was taught the Bible before I was 5. I had a fantastic comprehension for it, but it wasn't doctrine or dogma. It was prophecy and history that I was learning, and actually the spiritual aspect of it as well, to some extent. But at the age of 9, I actually had a dream, which about a week later happened. I lived through a dream that I had, which unfortunately the spiritual door got slammed in my face, and so I turned to science. So I literally grew up with the Bible in one hand and a test tube in the other, and kept looking for answers on how I was able to see something in the future. And this is at the age of 9. I lamented this, and I said, okay, well, it's time to turn to science. You see, we can't prove anything through dogma or doctrine. There are almost 40,000 sects of Christianity. How do you divide up what Jesus said 40,000 different ways? But science tends to be a little bit more accurate. And so by using science, we can now start to decode things which are obvious in the Bible, kind of like Genesis 2:21 through 23. I love this one because God says it's not good for the man to be alone. I'm going to create a helper for him. So what's he do? Read it. It says he causes a sleep to come over the man. He opens the flesh. He removes a rib. He closes the flesh ribs, regenerate, interestingly enough, and he takes the rib and he proceeds to make a woman from it. This is a record of genetic engineering. And so now we can start decoding the Bible. Now that we have the knowledge of genetic engineering, we can start looking at the scriptures from a different standpoint. And there's really only 2 narratives, maybe 3 narratives, which are creeping in. And that is the narrative within the scriptures, or the Anunnaki narrative. There's the Egyptian god narrative that links back to Atlantis. And I've got some interesting theories on Atlantis too, as far as genetic engineering goes. But since we've been able to unravel the human genome, what we found is that our DNA carries the information for every life form ever to exist on this planet, right back to the cyanobacteria and maybe the extremophile. We are the complete DNA of planet Earth. With our DNA, you can go back and recreate everything that was ever here, ever. So think about that. Think of the science behind that. Now you want to talk about scripture? Should we bring religion into this? Seriously? You want to talk about UFOs? Let's turn to the book of Ezekiel. You want to talk about extraterrestrials right there in Genesis 6? And then we have their offspring, the Nephilim. So if the Bible had to get a name today, it would be called 6,000 Years of Alien Intervention in Human History. And yet we have a fantastic future ahead, because once you decode the story and comprehend what is actually going on, we are children of the Creator. We are children of Father Yahweh, children of Jehovah. We don't need a religious label. We need a spiritual attachment, and that is where we are on this planet right now. We are in a sense of deep spiritual darkness. If you do not believe me, look around at what is happening. Where has the morality of America gone? Think about it.
Definitely. And Maggie, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us all a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Maggie Hart. We have two shows together on another network. We have Dinner with the Klings on Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 Eastern, and then we do the Positive Podcast also from 8 to 9 on Friday nights. And Peter and I met through the network, and I asked him to be a guest on my show, and he came on, and then, you know, vice versa, I was a guest on his show. And so basically my history is I was raised Roman Catholic. I did briefly get into the New Age movement, and about 5 years ago now, I was literally touched by the hand of Jesus, and it turned my whole life around. And I devoted my life to, and I had been previously, but I devoted my life even more so to helping the homeless, helping veterans, the less fortunate, distributing food and clothing and spiritual help. And so many years ago, I got involved in spiritual warfare, and I followed that path. And I did become ordained, but I really don't use the title. I'm internationally known for my spiritual warfare cases, but the thing that I tend to do that I think is different from a lot of other people out there is a client is not just a one and done with me. We teach people how to pray. We teach people how to develop prayerful discernment. We teach people to put on the armor of God every day and to read the scriptures and how to protect themselves spiritually, not just themselves, but their families. So it's a great way, actually, in an unfortunate situation when someone gives me a call and says, hey, you know, I'm having a problem, cabins are banging in the house, or, my son's jumping around and his voice is changing and he's screeching and acting like an animal, and there are just horrible sounds coming from his room at night. We're able to turn what could be a very fearful situation, and this is what the demons thrive on. They thrive on fear. So we're able to take that situation and as a whole family unit, help the entire family to heal from these types of situations. But furthermore, teach them how to protect themselves and teach others, kind of with a ripple effect, how to show their friends and the people that they love around them to pray effectively, especially with the times that are mounting in the world right now with all of the evil that is not only entrenched into our governmental system, but coming full force onto the planet with crimes and sexual predators and human trafficking, and the great jump in the amount of people that are using, especially synthetic drugs. All of these are gateways to the demonic. And so to be able to work with families and then have them ripple effect out to their friends and teach people how to pray and be strong in the Lord, it's just been a really very, very, I don't want to say successful ride, because that wouldn't be the right word.
Positive effect in a lot of people's lives.
Being able to touch a lot of people's lives in a positive way. And so that's basically what I do. Lectures and the radio shows, and I do have a couple of books out there too.
Now, I do want to point something out. We don't endorse any religion. And while a lot of this might sound religious to some extent, reading the Bible, praying, think about the history of TV shows. One of the shows I watched was Leave It to Beaver. Mom, dad, big brother, little brother, wise guy, friend. They were all family units. And now, from what I haven't watched TV in quite a while, but from now what I understand, we've got My Little Lesbian Pony coming on. Are you serious? And so within my lifetime, I've watched a slow degradation of society to the point now where it's becoming common knowledge that we have a serious human trafficking problem on this planet, and it's the largest money maker, I should say. It's the second largest money maker, save drug trafficking being number one. And we know through what's been going on in the news with Jeffrey Epstein and his pedophilia, that this news that just broke with this ABC anchor who was, caught on a hot mic, said that he was probably the worst pedophile in the world. Think about that. Seriously, think about that. Is that demonic? But it goes deeper. If you've heard anything about, Pizzagate just got swept right under the carpet. Whoa, that happened in D.C. No, it's all a hoax. But wait a minute. What about Weiner's laptop? Jeffrey Weiner's laptop. And what was it, the insurance policy file that he had, whatever he named it?
Yeah, all that stuff is a big deal for a minute, and then the next day everybody forgets about it and goes along with their everyday lives.
Yeah,
right.
Except for one of the officers that was involved in that, who now lives in Russia. He's safer. He feels safer in Russia, and he's got all of the Jeffrey Epstein tapes, and he's got allegedly he's got this Clinton file too with him. So guess what? The Russians have it as well. So, and he was one of the policemen that found Weiner's laptop. Now, I'm not going to get into what was on there, but let's face it. We just passed one of the most satanic holidays on the planet. Do you really think that children were not sacrificed during this time period? And we see all the little kids going around in costume. But what's happening at the uppermost echelon? What's happening within these eyes wide shut parties what happens beyond that? It's all been reported on. We know what happens to these children.
Something we've seen in the past few years is a revealing of this activity and a revealing of the deep state. And, after this Epstein fiasco, I see more people than ever questioning reality, questioning what's really going on behind the scenes. Do you think that we're going to see a continuation of this? I see half the people questioning it. Half of them are still asleep. What do you see going on in our future with that?
Well, if they're asleep, they're not going to be asleep for too long. However, we're going through a polarization of society, if you haven't noticed. And the pendulum has swung to the left about as far as it's going to swing from a societal standpoint at this juncture. Okay? Let's go to 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. It talks about this man of lawlessness who makes himself a god and sits presenting to be God in his throne. And this man of lawlessness will be exposed. Well, who is this man of lawlessness that can make himself a god? Let's see. Pope Francis have it come to mind? Think about it. The Pope is supposed to be a god on earth. And think of all the things that Francis has done. He's a Jesuit, number one, so he's an illegal Pope. He's carrying out the Jesuit and the Church initiative, which is a one world government, and they're using this, quote, carbon tax in order to turn around and the whole Green New Deal. Yeah. The only way that works is if about 2/3 of the population dies. Hello, Georgia Guidestone. And you know who's right with them? The Zionist banksters, because they are the biggest money makers on the planet. And that has to change. And so we see some of this going on, but it has to be exposed. It says the man of lawlessness will be exposed. So right now we're starting to see the edges burn.
So yes, in answer to your question, according to biblical prophecy, but also just because of the fact that finally we're able to kind of override the mainstream media with shows such as yours that are promoting the truth to the public, people are starting to wake up. It has been a slow process, but they are starting to wake up. And yes, I do think that that will continue on as we go forward, especially as some of these documents are released and some of these Epstein tapes are revealed, and more of what he's got written down in his little journals and things like that.
Yeah, this report has specifically mentioned Clinton. Think about that.
Yes, more will be coming to light, and people will start to wake up more as we go forward.
So if the news had this, a couple of years ago, if the news had this, what do you think the government already has? And they're playing, I'm not going to say games, but there's been a lot of smoke from, let's say, the Trump administration, and I think they're holding all the aces right now because the Democrats are, I mean, come on, Trump released this telephone call, he released the documents on it, and the Democrats are still trying to find a way to impeach him. Are you serious? So they're all being played. Allegedly, there's over, 130,000 sealed indictments. California's got 24. You wonder why California's burning? PG&E, Rothschild Corporation, is burning out the people in California, trying to carry out the UN Agenda 21, forcing people in rural areas or in urban areas into major cities so they can gain better control over them. There's also a few other things sitting behind that the high-speed rail that California is supposed to build, that may be going all the way to Beijing. So hold on to that. They might become part of the Belt and Road Initiative.
Now, do you think that we can trust Trump? Based on my historical research, I don't trust any president that we've had. They've all been under some sort of control. Trump has done some things that are different. He seems to be an outsider, but how can we know it's just not part of a larger agenda?
Maybe you take the first part. I'm going to follow up with the second part of that.
So I was given, and anybody can have this, when you pray a lot, you develop what's called prayerful discernment. And so I do see, I am shown some things in the future, and I was shown that Trump would win the election, and it was very unpopular at the time, but I was shown that he would win. And what I was shown specifically was that Hillary Clinton would be implicated in a very horrific set of crimes against children. I wasn't given the name Pizzagate, so I couldn't say that honestly, but what I was shown was that she would be outed as a key player in very horrific crimes against children, and I was actually shown what they were doing to those children in certain circles, and it was very distressing to me. What I was shown in prayer was not like so many pastors and reverends and preachers are up on their podium screaming about that Trump is God sent. What I was shown is that for the time being, he is being used by Jehovah to fulfill Jehovah's will and impart prophecy. So in answer to your question, I don't trust anybody 100% either. And I don't believe that he was God sent, as so many of the other pastors and preachers out there speak about. I believe that he was and is being used to fulfill prophecy, and is being used to fulfill God's will to a degree. But there's always been a little something there that, I don't trust anybody 100% either. And so because of the fact, especially that I wasn't shown in prayer that he was God sent, as so many of these other guys are proclaiming, I'm going to hold out on that one. I think he's doing God's will for now, and the rest of it remains to be seen.
He's a stick in the bicycle spokes of the cabals and the religions that are running the planet. Really, the deep state, what we call the deep state, is just, what we can see. They're the chess pieces on the board. We don't get to see who's behind the chess pieces, who's making the moves. We just get to see the pieces.
I will tell you, sorry not to interrupt you, but I do believe that Melania, I know that she's Roman Catholic, but I do believe that she does pray and is a spiritual warrior in her own right. There have been many rumors about the fact that she would not enter the White House until it was blessed. And if you look at their recent trip to England, you can note the fact that they did not stay in the royal palace, and I think there's a reason for that. I don't think that she was comfortable staying there, and I think that she advised against it. And the reason that I say that is because I do believe that she is a prayerful person, and I believe she is aware of spiritual warfare, as is Trump. And so for that effect, I think that they are doing and have done a very, very important deed for this country, and not just politically, but behind the scenes in regards to exposing the human trafficking rings, getting rid of the bad guys, as it were. Remarkably, they've done what no one else could do up to this point. And so for that, I think that they deserve a whole lot of credit.
Go back.
And nobody else has had the courage to do that up until now.
Just go back and look at the presidential or the executive order that was issued, December 21st, think of the date and the timing, December 21st, 2017, which made it very plain that they were going after human rights violators and people involved in conspiring against the government. So I've read that document about 3 times, and it's pretty explicit. So they're not playing, that they've set everything up. It's a house of cards that is about to fall. When Trump first threw his hat in the ring, I just wanted to go back to this. When Trump first threw his hat in the ring, I said 2 things. Number one, there's going to be the next president of the United States. And that he was being backed by the military.
Now, having said that, one thing that I will backstep here on a little bit is that as far as Melania goes and the president goes, one thing that I don't set easy with is the fact that they do celebrate pagan holidays such as Halloween. And if you noticed on the news, there was a big media story about the trick-or-treaters coming to the White House, and they do the Easter egg roll, both of which are pagan origin holidays. So having said that, there are a lot of people out there that are prayerful, but maybe misguided. So are they doing the best that they know how? And is he being driven somehow, maybe being given insight by Jehovah? I think that's possible. But when we look at the other side of the coin there, I kind of have to scratch my head a little bit because they are still engaging in some pagan holidays. What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious to know.
Well, I myself, I don't follow politics because I happen to believe personally that even though Trump has done some different things, I still don't trust him. I keep an eye on things in the background that are going on, but I just happen to think that it's all controlled. I think it's all a show. I think it's all in order to steer us in certain directions. I think that there's a certain faction behind Trump. They may not necessarily be in a bad force. I don't know that for sure, but I just don't trust it because I think that there are agendas at play that aren't necessarily in our favor.
Good point. Here's something that I sort of say about Trump being backed by the military when he, and there was specific reasons I said that. But I also said this: put Trump, Putin, and thee all in the same room, and they can change the world forever. And that happened, I believe it was this November of 2017 in Vietnam. Think about the timing of that, along with the executive order to come out the next month. So that did indeed happen. And there's a lot now we know about the negotiations with China. China's got to be cleaned out. China's banking system is run by the Jesuits. Think about who opened up China to really to turn it into a commercial powerhouse. It was Daddy Bush, while he was with the CIA, Knight of Malta, which makes him answerable only to the Pope, and Henry Kissinger. a Zionist shill. So we have essentially, takes us right back to the Knights Templar, the same people who invented the banking system, two riders on the same horse. One was being controlled by the church, the other one was being controlled by the Hebrews. There you go. It's a long, long, twisted history.
Now, I will say that I am, I very happy to see all this pedophilia being exposed and the child sex trafficking and all of this. I don't think that it would have been exposed any other way without him, getting in the office. But I could be wrong. But that is something that I do like that's happening right now.
And that's kind of what I was telling you earlier, is I was shown that he is being used to fulfill prophecy to a degree, and also in part he's doing God's will. So getting rid of the evil, getting rid of the pedophilia and the human trafficking, and exposing all these corrupt people in our higher echelons, especially right down to the lowest level, and also the policy that he's trying to enforce on immigration. The reason for that is the what are they called?
MI6? Oh, no, wait, which one? Policy out.
The ones that are coming into the country illegally. A lot of these people are very horrific criminals, and they do need to be stopped from coming into our country illegally.
Maybe they're a sector of it.
There absolutely is, a lot that he's doing. And, and then we can take it right on through to the amount of jobs that he's created and what he's doing for the economy. Overall, on the surface, he's doing an amazingly good job, and I have to give him credit for all of the wonderful things that he's done for our country. However, as I said, I'm kind of on the same page with you in that, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Some things I've been shown in prayer, Peter knows, and I'm really not ready to disclose a lot of that right yet for some personal reasons.
We'll go back to, think about the power brokers. I mean, the major power brokers here, Russia, China, and the United States. You've got India involved just by the sheer population and what they're doing in India. And the goal is to get to a one world government, but not the one that is being currently pushed by the Zionist and the church. I find it interesting that the Sanhedrin, which is essentially the Jewish religious high court in Israel, tapped both Trump and Putin to play the part of Cyrus the Great. Now, Cyrus the Great was named 150 years before he was born. And then when we look at the history behind Cyrus, he was actually responsible for conquering Babylon. Babylon the Great. There's a connection there. And he repatriated, or started the repatriation of the Jews back to their homeland. It was King Darius, the Mede, it was the Medes and the Persians that destroyed Babylonia. He actually helped finance the rebuilding of the temple. So between the two of them, Jerusalem was restored, and they want the temple rebuilt in Jerusalem. Think about what Trump did by moving the embassy to Jerusalem. So that was a declaration right there. And so there's a lot of prophecies that are going on, minor ones that are going on, but there's some major ones to come. And 64, 65 countries are not supporting the United Nations, the United States being one of them. We haven't paid our dues. Of course, we pay 24%, I believe, no, 22% toward just supporting the United Nations and 26% to the military fund. Wait a minute. How many countries are part of the United Nations? Why are we paying almost a quarter of the cost to run this illicit operation that was actually an invention of the Rothschilds and the banking family cartels that supported Zionism? Do the history of the United Nations, the forerunner was the League of Nations. And before that, they tried doing that. It was back in 1815 at the Congress of Vienna, I believe it was, when they were trying to redraw the lines of Europe and form a unilateral government to help govern Europe during the Napoleonic, or at the end of the Napoleonic Wars. and it was Lord Rothschild who cursed Tsar Alexander's family because he didn't want to be part of their club. He wanted to go home. And Lord Rothschild's curse was, my descendants will see your descendants wiped off the face of the earth. That happened in 1917. You know what else happened in 1917? The Balfour Declaration. You know what else? England beat back the Ottoman Empire and captured Jerusalem. Let's see, what else happened? The Bolshevik Revolution, and yes, Lord Rothschild's words were right. Tsar Alexander's descendants were wiped off the face of the earth as Tsar Nicholas and his family were murdered by the Zionist-backed Bolshevik Revolution. It was the Oppenheimer family and the Rothschild family that backed that revolution using the Tsar's own money. Think about that. So do they care about life? No. They have an agenda to carry out. And this is the sickness that we need to defeat. And what it goes now, we talked about spiritual warfare. Who do you think these people worship? What God do you think they pray to? A satanic one that requires live human sacrifice? Think about that. Yeah, so it all comes back to the spiritual warfare. Families are under attack.
No, I agree 100%. And there's all kinds of agendas at play going on right now. What worries me is I see the Zionist side, I see the far left faction, but I also see a Fourth Reich type far right extreme faction that seems to be on the rise as well. It seems to be associated with all this censorship going on, and it seems to be there's two factions just battling it out for control. Do you see this?
Revelation 13. Why is there? It talks. We get this beast which ascends out of the sea. And this is really this beast is a composite beast. It's made up of different animals. It's got 7 heads, lion's heads, and 10 horns. Each of the horns have diadems, which indicate kingdoms. And it comes out of the sea. The sea is the unstable part of the earth. The sea of turmoil of World War I is what this was. And this beast is 7 heads for 7 world powers, complete altogether across since Egypt. The 10 horns are the 10 kingdoms that rule those 7 world powers. We can break them down, but for time we'll save it. And the composite body, think about every nation has some sort of animal that is part of. We have the American eagle, the British have the lion, the Russians have the bear. A lot of countries use the leopard, part of this beast, and so. This comes to power as the League of Nations, which actually Woodrow Wilson, who was being blackmailed by an actual Zionist faction here in the United States. Imagine how they keep on creeping up. He actually wrote the charter for the League of Nations. Well, the League of Nations gets this death stroke during at World War II, but it gets healed and it comes back a little stronger, and it comes back as the United Nations. But then something happens. Revelation chapter 13 talks about this other beast, this false prophet. And what does this false prophet is great. They can call fire down from heaven. Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Tokyo, burned to the ground with incendiaries. Hamburg, Germany, Dresden, Germany, all burned with incendiaries. Fire from the sky, literally coming down. It was the English that did Europe. And this is a 2-horned beast that looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. Looks like a lamb, peaceful lamb, but it speaks like a dragon. And this 2-horned beast creates an image of this first wild beast. The pendulum is swinging. You see, the first wild beast isn't really recognized anymore. Now this image is being made. And this image, people are forced to worship this image. And we cannot either buy or sell unless we have the mark of this image. And it's a man's mark, 666. So it's going to be different than the United Nations. It's going to be something else. And what's happening in the United States as far as us trying to deal with the deep state is happening in England. And that's why, they've been fighting with this Brexit as long as they've been trying to impeach Trump. You wonder why? Yeah, because this is all part of what is coming down. This is, like I said, the stick in a bicycle spoke. You don't, it kind of puts an end to the ride kind of quickly. And that's what's going on, but it's just not the America. It's all around the world. Look at all the protests in all the different countries because people are fed up with what they have been fed. Think about that. Protests all around the world. We just hear about Hong Kong, some places in South America, but all around the world there are protests going on in the streets.
In response to your remark about the Reich movement, and I do see a part of that coming into society, I do see somewhat of an increase in that, just as you do. And one of the things I'd like to speak to on that is I believe it was conservatives that termed the coin sheeple. And, there are sheeple on both sides of the fence. We are told by Scripture to question everything. And so for me, it's a matter of prayerful discernment. And I would hope that would be for all your listeners as well, because you don't want to blindly follow the mass, whether it be the left or the right. You want to have the discernment and the intellect to think on your own and make your own determination.
100%. Yeah, I think it's all about divide and conquer. Each side wants to play us against each other, so we're doing anything but coming together and moving forward together as a society. Rather, we're just hating each other and fighting each other because of this division.
And that's something that I've been speaking of for several years now. It's the ultimate old game plan: divide and conquer. Whether it be Black Lives Matter or the issues of abortion, whatever it be, it's a matter of separating us as a people, because the dark forces know that divided we are weaker. And so what a lot of us need to do is step away from social media, but not in light of, let's just take, for instance, the most recent presidential election. There were people on Facebook that have been friends for 30 years in real life. Well, I'm not going to talk to you anymore if you're voting for him, and I hate you, and I'm going to delete you and never speak to you again and block you if you voted for her. That's the game plan. You're falling for it. Let's join together as people. Let's help each other. Let's get to know our neighbors. Let's organize community gardens, and work together as a people. And structurally look at the system, look at what needs to be changed, and work together to change it. You agree?
Definitely, 100%. And we need to get to this before we run out of time tonight. We need to talk about the whole UFO thing. Right now, we're seeing footage from UFO. Mainstream media is talking about it like never before. I have done I've been researching this for a long time, and the more I look into it, the more of the nuts and bolts physical aspect of it falls away. It becomes more of an interdimensional type thing. It seems that these gray aliens may just be some sort of biological robots as an interface or interaction with us, with these interdimensional beings. It goes very deep, deeper than anyone will ever admit and any researcher can ever get to. But do you think what's happening right now is like a slow drip disclosure? Is it all disinformation? Are they preparing us for something? Is it going to be a fake invasion? What are your thoughts on what's happening right now with all of this?
As far as for myself, I think you hit it right on the head. I think we were being spoon-fed this like never before. And yes, we're seeing this exactly in the newscast. And yeah, I do think it is a form of soft disclosure, but it's not truthful in essence. And the reason that what I believe personally is that they're opening us up for this disclosure so that they can tell us, okay, here are these shiny white beings that are coming down and they're going to speak to us and perform miracles and wonders, just as the scripture says. And, oh, hey, we seated you here. Look what you're doing to the planet. We've come here to save you. We're here to save you. And that is the ultimate deception. Lucifer is known as what?
He keeps on changing himself from
The
an
light
angel
bearer?
of darkness into an angel of light.
There you go. So that's my personal take on it. Peter?
Well, I kind of led off with this. We have two narratives which we're, really given. There's the narrative that we've had running consistently for 3,500 years, and that is the information that we have within the scriptures. However, within the last, I'm going to say 20 years, maybe 25 years, a little bit longer, depending on when you started getting involved in this. But we've got now the Anunnaki texts. And really, and they say, the Anunnaki texts must be more accurate. They're about 1,000 years older than what's written in the Bible. Start doing research into the Anunnaki, and you realize how convoluted their story is. You go back to Genesis, and it's real simple. The way that it's laid out is pretty much the way that you would build a solar system and then bring about a planet that could be inhabited by what? And God said, let us create man in our image. Wait a minute, whose image? The image of God and the angels? The cherubs, the seraphim? What image are we created in? Biologically, we are created to inhabit planet Earth. We have to be within certain biological parameters. But at the soul level, we were created as the children of God, the children of Father Yahweh. So, okay, are we God's children? Or are we the creation of Anunnaki genetics and our ancestors swung in trees? That's what the Anunnaki story is. Oddly enough, what did Darwin say? Could our ancestors have swung in trees?
In response to your gray aliens, I absolutely believe and actually have been also guided in prayer to be shown. There are many, many governmental secret programs going on in which there are these beings that are created, some of which have human DNA, kind of hybrid creatures and things like that. But in scripture, there's really nothing that says that angels had wings. We depict them as such. Many beautiful statues show them as such. We like to put them on our coffee table or on our hearth. But the reality of the matter is that there's really nothing that substantiates that in scriptures. So when you take that and you look at the whole fallen angel story in the Bible and how Lucifer was thrown to earth to reign here, it would stand to reason that these creatures, since they don't have wings, need to get around in some sort of vehicles, right?
Oh, you would think so. Or they're interdimensional.
And there you go. That was the other side of the coin. Yes, absolutely.
Now, Chris, you brought something up earlier when you mentioned that we're not dealing with flesh and blood. And go back to what I call the first alien invasion, which is recorded in Genesis, the 6th chapter, or in the book of Enoch. What does it say in Genesis? It says, the sons of the true God saw that earth women were hot once they started to have a large population. And it says that they came and took wives for themselves, all whom they chose. It was an alien invasion, plain and simple. Let's bring it up to where we are today. Revelation 9 seems to talk about an alien invasion. You get to the latter part, you get to the middle part, it talks about this invasion that has a king over it once the pit of the abyss is open. Hello, CERN. That's a whole nother show there. But the pit of the abyss is open, and the king of this plague, which is released upon the earth, his name is Abandon or Apollyon. Apollyon rising? Yeah. You go on, and it talks about a war that takes place, and there are two myriads of angels that come, which is approximately, they're actual spiritual warriors, interdimensionals, which come and they actually have a fight right here on planet Earth, and a third of the men die. So there's the prophecy. As far as an alien invasion goes, yeah, we're being soft-fed. They've got '98 with the retired CEO of Lockheed Skunk Works said we have the technology to take ET home, and if you can think about it, we've already done it. And that was 20 years ago. What do we have now? And where is the technology coming from? Well, why do you think it started back with the Germans in Germany with the sacrificing of children to aliens? Why does it always come back to children? Why? Because satanic creatures want live sacrifices. They want us to sacrifice the most innocent of God's creatures, the most innocent of the children of God, and those are the youngest. We have a Molech worship alive and well in this planet. And we actually have three principalities: Baal, Ashtoreth, and Molech. If we have more time, we go into this. But the Bible talks about the Valley of Hinnom, and where was one of the places where Molech worship went on, which was recently excavated by archaeologists. And what they said is they found the remains of over 40,000 infant bodies, 80% of them were 3 months or younger. Think about that. So it's just interesting to see what is actually going on here with these people who are in charge of this planet. Now, we talk about the political end. What we didn't talk about is the ruling end. The monarchies that run this planet, who believe they have the bloodlines going back to where? Ancient Samaria and the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki was essentially the second alien invasion of planet Earth. And if you look at the Sumerian text versus the Babylonian text, the story gets greatly embellished, where we know with the scriptures what is recorded there by the Dead Sea Scrolls are still very much intact. So go back to what we're told is the number one commandment. You must have no other gods before me, is what Father Yahweh said. He didn't. Yahweh never denied the fact that there were other gods out there. They were being worshipped by everybody. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Canaanites, whoever was out there, they were worshiping these other gods. And so we've got a plethora. Just go down the Egyptian list, we'd probably know that one the best. It's all the same story told over and over again, and those same gods, alien gods, are being worshipped today. Think about it. Why is there an Egyptian obelisk in St. Peter's Square?
Definitely. And, I think we are right now, we're seeing an apocalypse of sorts. It's more of an unraveling of the truth for everyone. I'd like to know your take on what we're going to see in the next 10 years. Is it going to unravel to the point where we're actually going to be free of some of this tyranny and this evil that we're under? Or do you see it just a continuation of more of the same?
10 years is pretty far out. I hope it doesn't last that long, but I've been doing this for 10 years, so.
Right, yeah.
You can't give anything a number as far as a date. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The only way that you can really keep track of this is to comprehend the prophecies and then keep time by the prophecies. There aren't too many prophecies left to come into play. And with this whole child trafficking thing, I've said this time and time again, how do you take down a religious empire? Let the children speak. So think about how this unravels, where it's going to lead to. And we're going to have to see a reset. We're told that the nation shall declare peace and security. So we have to get to a point of peace and security. Will it involve alien technology? More than likely. From what I understand, the U.S. Navy has released patents on fusion technology. miniature fusion technology. How do you power a spacecraft? Fusion technology, maybe.
Yeah, and the U.S. Army also has a contract with a rock star right now, but that's a whole nother show as well.
It's just they're about to do something. You know, when has the Navy ever come out and released any kind of footage about the Nimitz? Was it had an encounter with UFOs, and the Navy actually released this? If this wasn't a soft disclosure, thank you.
Yeah, it wouldn't be released unless they wanted it to be released.
Absolutely not.
And so, figure what Maggie said. We both saw this independently. There are genetic labs on the Earth, on the Moon, and on Mars.
Yeah.
We can expect 3 different races of aliens to show up sooner or later. And I'll go back to what Carol Rosen said, quoting Warner von Braun, the last card will be the alien card. You want to reset? Think what aliens showing up on our doorstep would do. However, there's a cleanup coming. This is like the false Antichrist. How it'll actually develop, I don't know. But go to Revelation 19, and it talks about the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, talking about Jesus Christ, who gave his blood for our sins, but not because we can't do what's right. It's because of our imperfect human DNA. He gave perfect human DNA so we could change things here on Earth. It bought him the legal right to control what goes on here on planet Earth. And Revelation 19 says that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords is going to show up with the armies of heaven. Armies, plural, heaven, across the entire cosmos. Why are they coming here? To arrest the rogue element controlling planet Earth. That's laid out in chapter 12 of Revelation. War breaks out in heaven between the dragon and its angels and Michael and his angels. And the dragon does not prevail. And down to the earth it was cast. And it drags down 1/3 of the stars with its tail. And the devil is cast down to the earth having great anger. Why? Because he knows he has a short amount of time. We are talking about interdimensional alien forces who broke cosmic law 6,000 years ago, trying to overtake or seize planet Earth and enslave the children of Father Yahweh for their own design. The 3rd dimension, our physical dimension, was created for humans. The other 7 dimensions, which are needed to support the physical 3-dimensional world in which we live, we actually live in a 10-dimensional world. The physical dimensions are the pinnacle of creation. Dimensions 8, 9, and 10. Because without dimensions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a very spiritual number, we cannot possibly exist, according to string theory. So, you need the science to comprehend the scriptures.
Having said that, free will is something that we are all, it's a God-given right. So as far as your question to how long will this all take, nobody knows for sure, and anybody that proclaims to know for sure isn't telling you the truth, I don't believe, because scripture also says that nobody will know when he comes back, right? He's the only one. Father's the only one. So when we look at it that way, we have to make an educated and also a spiritual choice to decide which side we want to follow. It's kind of black or white.
It's wheat and weeds time, sheep and goats time.
So, that's going to have a lot to do with us individually speaking as to whether or not we're able to withstand these times and whether the end comes sooner for some of us rather than later, don't you think?
Yes, definitely. And that was very well said. And I want to thank you guys so much for coming on tonight. Before you head out, could you tell the audience where they can find your show?
Sure. It's actually WCET, Late Night in the Midlands.
So if you go to www.latenightinthemidlands, midlands.com, you'll find us there. We're on WCET-FM. We're on Kaya, KYAH 570 AM. We're on iTunes, Paranormal Radio app. And on the main page for Late Night in the Midlands, all of our archives from the past year or so are supposed to be slowly being uploaded there. We're waiting with bated breath for that. But we're on Wednesday nights, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Eastern Standard. That's Dinner with the Klings. It's kind of a more fun show. You know, we do some recipes. We do some, basically what we try and do with that is have a fun show with topics that people talk about around the dinner table. Although we get a little bit more in depth. We do some entertainment, we do some news, we do some current events, and we do some spiritual stuff as well on that. And then Friday, 8 to 9 also Eastern Standard is the Positude Podcast. And that is virtually, it could be any topic under the sun. We talk about aliens, we talk about demons, we talk about politics, we talk about current events, world tragedies, you name it, we cover it. Bigfoot.
What's going on in California?
What's going on in the California wildfires, everything we cover. And Peter, do you want to give your contact information?
Yeah.
We do have a joint email too, but we both pretty much use Peter's also.
Sure. It's ONE, spell out one, at peterkling.com. ONE at peterkling.com is the email. My website has become antiquated. We ran into some situations, and I need to get a web designer because I'm totally ignorant when it comes
He's not
to...
very computer literate.
Hey, you know, I stick to my expertise, and computers aren't part of that. But, you know, the one thing I do want to close with, we're going to be facing trials sometimes here. It'll get better for a little bit, and then it'll be a total disaster on our hands. And what'll cause that, I'm figuring that, you know, the one thing you can't predict is how long they're going to keep the economy going. But Trump's been pushing it until he can get reelected. So I figure the economy is finally going to give out and be replaced somewhere in 2021. The UN agenda is going to fall flat on its face. They'll probably come out with a gold-backed cryptocurrency. And what they're talking about is regional currencies. You remember the Euro? It'll be something similar to that, but only worldwide. In other words, you know, China might keep their yuan. The United States will have some kind of treasury note as opposed to the Federal Reserve note that we're using. It'll either be /crypto, plastic, or possible actual currency, but it will be backed by precious metals, primarily gold, and physical resources of the countries that have that currency or that are using that currency.
I'm just going to throw this out there. I was shown in prayer cryptocurrency is not the way to go, and I don't think it's something of pure spiritual origin. So just saying. But one thing that we also try and educate our people, and I know you're probably about out of time, is just please do prepare for your families. You know, put by the food and water just in case, not just for a spiritual manifestation of some of the evil times that are coming up on us on the planet, but just in the case of a natural disaster.
We live off the grid for a reason. You know, we spent the summer off the grid together, and we're actually going to be living full time off the grid. And you know, that's a choice that we made to become self-sufficient now, while the system is still up and running. It might seem a little extreme, but that's where we're at. You know, you got to lead by example, and as self-sufficient as we can become, the more better off that we will be. But at the very least, to be prepared.
Definitely better to be prepared than, you know, to be caught with your pants down and in a major disaster or anything that happens. And Maggie, Peter, thank you so much again for coming on, and we will definitely have y'all back on in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much
for the opportunity.
And
thank you to all your listeners as well.
Absolutely. And if should anybody be interested, you can write me, ONE@peterkling.com, request a copy of Letters to Earth, and I'll be more than happy to send you a PDF copy. With that, I'm going to say love and blessings. Thank you, Chris, for having us on. Have a fantastic night.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great night.